Hey everybody, it's me, Dealing Games. And you know, I had to come back and I had to do a video because it turns out I was right about something. So go ahead and do me a favor, slap that like button, slap it, because it's me, Dealer Games. And I'm never wrong. And this proves I'm never wrong. It's simple math, folks. Let's get into it. Hey, what's up, everybody? We're going to have a little bit of fun today. And, you know, I've been having so much fun lately. Like, to be honest with you, just seeing the amount of vitriol from, like, the fanboys, and they just can't stand it. Like, honestly, it's been so funny to kind of put this stuff out there and see how many people are going around trying to justify what's going on with, you know, a lot of these Xbox YouTubers and a lot of these pro Xbox folks. Now, the interesting thing here is, you know, it seems like it's a different excuse day after day. And what I mean by that is, it seems like, you know, once in a while Xbox will pick up a win over something. Like, if you look at an older game, for the most part, let's look at an older game like, let's say Doom Eternal. Okay, gets an update, and, you know, obviously that's going to run via backwards compatibility mode on PlayStation 5. So the performance is right away going to do much better on the Xbox Series X, because they've just done a better job of doing backwards compatibility things. Now, when it comes to current gen games, it's no surprise to me anyway that PS5 is performing better, especially when it comes to, like, frame rates and things like that, on, let's say, probably 75% of new current gen games. We're not talking about old last gen games or via backwards compatibility. We're talking about, you know, current gen games. Now, the funny thing is Dealing Games, you know, famous for a lot of things, but probably famous to me for just being a complete wrong dumbass, and kind of, you know, just this weird little guy. And, you know, the funny part about this stuff is like, I take it all with, like, sort of a humor and stuff like that. So he's known for, like, way back in March of 2020, talking about how the GPU on the Series X would get 40 to 50 frames per second faster than the PlayStation 5, and on top of what is likely better ray tracing, and on top of that 100 plus gigabytes per second more bandwidth, on top of a faster CPU. So he doubled down on this as well recently when Mass Effect Trilogy came out, and tried to make it seem like he was right about this original quote from March of 2020, which he wasn't right, by the way, because, again, that's a last-gen game running via backwards compatibility, so it caps out on what it can do on the PlayStation 5, because it's only getting 5.5 gigs allowed running PS4 Pro, basically, levels. Then you also had Mr. Dolt Eastwood talk about a 30% power advantage, which is way high. In my opinion, is a lot when you're talking better performance in pixels, better ray trace. Well, he says better performance, which is laughable, especially considering the current gen situation where, you know, we have current gen games. There's a whole list of them that are actually have better performance on the PlayStation 5. Better ray tracing. Again, this is really subjective because Xbox first party hasn't really put ray tracing in anything. Sony's has been really active in putting ray tracing in, you know, a lot of their games, Ratchet & Clank, Miles Morales, all that stuff. So, again, he says almost every game will look and feel better on Xbox Series X over PS5, which has been one of the most fraudulent statements that we've heard so far. I mean, here we are, you know, 10 months into a generation, and it doesn't look like, you know, it doesn't look good. It's not a good look for Xbox, in my opinion, that they are suffering with such a problem when it comes to being able to get things out that are going to realistically take advantage of the console. Now, I'm not the only one that's saying that. There's a lot of other people saying that, but, you know, for some reason people will disagree with this. So now I'm looking at this Digital Foundry deal with PlayStation 5, and apparently, so the tables turn. This is what they say about it. The tables turn when we look at performance, where undoubtedly PlayStation 5 has a commanding advantage. Both versions of the game can drop frames dramatically in the sequence before the initial drop, but actual gameplay is pretty one-sided. For the vast majority of play, PlayStation 5 is mostly locked at 120 frames per second with full VSync. So in common with quite a few back-compat titles, you're getting the same resolution as the PS4 Pro game. Like I said, earlier, it's because when they run backwards compat, they're really locked into the 5.5 gigs that the PS4 Pro is allowing. So, but it is matched with the 2x performance multiplier. There can be small dips beneath it, and it works for me as a really good 120 Hz experience. Clearly there are issues on Xbox Series X. It's rare that the game locks at 120 frames per second, and typically performance lingers in the 90 to 110 frames per second range. Screen tearing is the top third of the screen, also is commonplace. Now, before anybody gets into this, I want to mention that, Crapgamer's only telling part of the story. That they do mention that the image is a little bit crisper on the Xbox Series X, which again could explain why you're getting the frame rate issues. Like, their best thing that they could do is probably go in there and lower it. And also, people are going to talk about VRR, which if you have a VRR compatible machine, it's going to help take care of some of the screen tearing, but maybe not all of the issues that we're seeing here. So again, this is very interesting to see that you could see almost up to a 40-second difference in certain areas. And not only that, like, listen, Warzone for me was already a PlayStation 5 thing, because PlayStation 5 is the only console that you can disable crossplay with PC. So if you guys know what I'm talking about, then playing Warzone against PC players almost a guarantee you to end up playing against somebody who is running some kind of cheats and things like that. I mean, they ban so many people on that, and really it only takes one person doing it to ruin an entire game. So yeah, like, when you see that happen, it is very unfortunate, and you see like such a high level. Now listen, also I have to mention that you have to disable HDR to run this on 120 frames mode on PS5. But again, if I'm asking you, would you rather run better frames, or would you rather run less frames and HDR? Like, I think that's a pretty easy question for anybody with a brain. I think that's something that a lot of people are going to be able to kind of talk about. So in a competitive fast-paced shooter, especially Call of Duty, which one do you guys think is more important? I'm going to let you guys kind of figure this out, but is it HDR more important, or is a high and steady frame rate more important? Like, just be honest. I'm just curious. Like, being completely honest. Now, when it comes to the topic of VRR, again, sometimes you can get a washed out picture because of that, but mostly a lot of 2.1 HDMI TVs support that, but you don't necessarily have to have a 2.1 TV to support it, but it does have to be a newer TV. And when you look at how many TVs are actually out there that support it, I was looking it up, there's actually kind of conflicting conflicting sorts of information. So according to this, the VRR format is part of HDMI 2.1 spec and is starting to appear on some TVs, even some that officially only have HDMI 2.0 sockets. It's worth noting that a TV that supports HDMI 2.1 won't definitely support HDMI VRR, although it is likely. So again, this is like the big argument that a lot of Xbox fanboys will make about VRR on the current gen consoles. Only Xbox One X and Xbox Series X support VRR, and VRR is not supported on PlayStation 5 at this time. Basically, the primary use the FreeSync format, but they also support HDMI VRR. If your TV supports FreeSync, that's what the console will send it. If it doesn't, but does support HDMI VRR, it will send it to that instead. That's why some people who have TVs that aren't on the FreeSync compatibility list are still able to activate VRR on their Xbox. Both current versions of the Xbox support VRR in a window of 40 Hz to 60 Hz, but things get really interesting when we look forward to like what's going on with the 120 Hz, and the HDMI 2.1 will handle VRR in 4K as low as 30 Hz right up to 120. So as long as your TV can do the same, again, Xbox Series X will support both FreeSyncs and HDMI VRR. And things are less clear with PS5 when looking at the video out portion of the official specs. It specifically states VRR specified by HDMI version 2.1. So they're taking kind of that to mean that it supports some, but Sony hasn't really activated any of this stuff though. So like looking into it, how many TVs actually have it, it's a very low percent of TVs that are actually using this. So I get the argument for VRR. I just think that it's not necessarily the best argument when they could probably lower the resolution and have a situation where you're gonna have better frame rates. Like especially for Call of Duty, geez, can you imagine going Xbox versus PlayStation and having a 40 frame advantage over somebody that's on Xbox? That's, man, I don't know. I wouldn't like that. That's all I'm saying. So let me know what you guys think. Sound off, rate, comment, subscribe. Make sure you dislike, because I know a lot of you don't like the truth, and I get it. So rack 'em up. Crap Gamer out.